Hello everyone, this is JPL, and I today am joined with,
Matthew here.
and
So a legend.
yes, and we are the Council of Podcast Name in Brackets, and today we'll be talking about Star Wars: The Last Jedi. First things first, what are y'all's thoughts on it? What do you think about the movie?
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I always lead with I watched it twice, and the first time I did not like it, like at all. But the second time I watched through it, I loved it. So
Yeah, it really
I
gets better on the second viewing.
I would have to
Yeah,
agree.
yeah. After the first movie, I was very just I didn't really know what to think of the movie because so much had happened. There was a lot of controversial things that happened. It's a very split decision on this movie about people's reactions to it. So, where should we start off?
Um, that's
And
a
a
good
long time
question.
ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
I guess we could start off with the setting then.
Oh yeah,
We could do that.
I felt. Yeah, I think one of the weakest aspects of the movie was the plot in general.
Okay. In
Like it
what
felt,
regard?
um, it felt kind of like especially the whole like the resistance is being chased by the First Order. It felt like an episode of the Clone Wars.
Mm.
Okay. Yeah.
Just sort of like the gimmick of the whole plot. But then on the second time that I saw that bothered me a bit less.
Yeah. I think like what bothered me a little bit more than maybe it should have is like traditionally in Star Wars, between the movies, there's a decent amount of time, whether it be a month or a year or 10 years, or 30, whichever. There's a decent amount of time, so we have the whole text crawl for that.
Yes.
Um, in this movie, it's been like a second since, well, longer than that, depending on which part of the story. But like, it happens immediately after, and like the text crawl kind of contradicts what happened in the last movie. Like, the last movie was like, hey, the First Order's like rising up and stuff, and we should like stop them because they got this really big bad weapon. And they take out the bad weapon, and everything's good. And then like the next movie is like, hey, First Order's in charge now. Deal with it. It was just kind of weird.
Yeah. It didn't really feel like seconds had passed. It felt like 2 years had passed, to be honest.
Yeah.
Especially I was thinking about one scene, with when Rose was introduced. Like she recognized Finn as like, you're Finn. You blew up the Death Star. Like you're like a legend. And it's like, okay, so how does she know Finn from only, I don't know, him being there for a couple of hours?
That is
That doesn't seem.
that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that she would be enamored by that point
Mm.
Yeah.
if it was only a few seconds. And I think for me the biggest issue with having it take place at the same time, the story itself is actually pretty good. I like the story. It's a fine story, but the problem is that if this story is supposed to take place in a trilogy of movies that's supposed to set up this world, and yet we still don't know anything about the world still. Like, we don't really know much about the First Order. We don't know anything about Snoke. Um, there's
Yeah.
still there's still a lot of stuff that's missing, and so that's why I feel like the third movie in the trilogy is probably not going to be as good or very weak. Because one, J.J. Abrams, he has trouble finishing off things. So yeah, I don't feel like it's going to be tightly knit. All strings put together. It's not going to be that at the end.
I agreed to some degree. Um, but at the same time, it isn't just JJ working on it. Obviously,
Of course.
Gary Johnson, I believe. Is it Gary? Ryan?
No, Ryan.
Oh, I
I
don't
don't think
remember his
he's
name.
on the movie.
Director for last.
Ryan Johnson.
Ryan Johnson.
Yeah.
What did I say? Anyways, I think personally, I think he did better than the previous movie.
Of course, yes.
Just in establishing a more original story. And while I think JJ did a good job with the cinematography and some of the character development, I think Johnson did a better job, at least in the storytelling aspect. As far as character development, I don't really know, because we got a little bit with Finn. We got a lot with Kylo, I think, but it's a little bit more subtle. Poe
Yeah.
is probably the biggest character development. And then
Well, not really. I can come back to that later.
Okay.
There's a bit of issue with this character.
okay. But anyways, like, I think Ryan Johnson did a better job at it, and like that's why Disney's giving him his own trilogy to work with later.
Maybe.
Well,
Yeah.
but that's the word around town.
With the box office, I don't think if
And the critical split.
the critics aren't split, but yeah, the fan base.
Yeah, but the audience split is what I mean.
Yeah, I don't know.
And-
I still think, personally, I think he did a better job. But, meh.
I like his directing. Some of his writing, I feel, could be changed.
Which parts?
Definitely the side plots that have nothing to do with anything with the movie.
Yeah, okay, so the whole casino scene, I'm assuming, is
The
part
whole
of that.
casino, the whole thing with the Holdo and Poe, you know.
That part I didn't mind, honestly, because, I mean, that whole part of it being, it was kind of contrived at the end of the day. Like, there didn't really need to be a conflict there, I don't think.
I have a theory
and-
on that, though.
Okay,
I'll talk about more when we get to the Poe character section, but
yeah,
And, you know, put them together.
yeah.
but,
Uh,
like, I don't know, I find the, like, space part of it, to be pretty fine and dandy.
Yeah.
Obviously, the focus should have been more on Rey and Kylo and Luke. But they did focus on that quite a bit, but they did take it a different direction too.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And, I mean, I think the controversy around it, I don't know that there's that many people that disliked it. I think it's just a very vocal group of people.
Yeah. And
I've
like,
seen
yeah, sorry. Keep
some
going.
people are sort of speculating that it may be DC EU fans who are trying to take down a Disney franchise, which, I mean, it's a bit of a conspiracy theory, but that's not out of the...
And I'm sure there definitely are a lot of DCEU fans that think that way, but I would assume that that's more of a minority.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so I just watched the Nostalgia Critics review of it.
I feel like his review is very much on point.
Yeah, and like in his closing statements, he argues that like he did enjoy the movie. It's just there were some pretty big problems with it, and that's not like obviously no movie is going to be perfect, and expecting it to be is just unrealistic. But they definitely could have done better in some areas, and I hope they improve it for the next parts of their story.
Yeah, the one thing I hope that they don't do is I hope they don't backpedal or end up in a situation where J.J. Abrams comes back and tries to undo The Last Jedi,
Mm.
because that would be very counterproductive.
I'm not sure how you would undo it.
Well, revealing Rey's parents to be someone else, or
Well, that's actually going to happen. Ryan Johnson said that the
yeah.
seal has not been closed on that.
And I don't know, I feel like if you're going
I
to
mean,
make that bold
that
of a
makes sense
decision,
though.
yeah, but if you're going to make that bold of a decision, you should stick with it.
Okay, this is my problem with that whole part. Is like it wasn't set up, I think.
Yeah.
And I think if based on the way it was set up, like it feels like that's not the actual answer. Like that's more of a lie. But I like some of the philosophy behind, hey, these are a bunch of like ragtag people. Like Finn is just an ex-stormtrooper. Rey is allegedly just the daughter of junkards. Like the only like person with real lineage is Kylo Ren, and he's I think that's a cool concept to play on. I just don't know like what they're gonna do with it, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't feel like that was the direction they were originally going. So I think that's the more frustrating part.
I think part of the problem is that they didn't have a direction, because it sounds like J.J. Abrams, when he was making The Force Awakens, he was making a bunch of loose plot threads that could be picked up by the next director. So,
which wasn't very much picked up.
Well, yeah, Ryan Johnson decided to not pick up any of them.
Well, and at the same time too, like The Last Jedi was being written as Force Awakens was being filmed. So any minor changes that did happen, like, kind of had to go in last minute. I don't know.
Yeah, I think some people have been suggesting that there should have been 2 years between each Star Wars movie, and I think that might have been a better idea, just to give them some time to figure out where they're headed.
Yeah, if you're gonna put this stuff closely together, then it has to be a TV show.
Yeah, and there's also a bit of like fatigue of, this is the third Star Wars movie in 3 years. So if we get a Star Wars movie every year, what's the fun of going to Star Wars?
That's a big point too, because like seeing the Force Awakens was like, I don't know, it was a whole experience for me. Like it was the first Star Wars released in however long, and like I actually knew I was actually like not a child going into, well, actually that was the first Star Wars movie I'd seen in theaters, so like it was a whole new experience for me. But like I like, this is the thing, it feels, I always feel bad complaining about how much content we are getting, because we got Force Awakens, Rogue One, we got 8, and we're getting a Han Solo movie, and we're getting 9, and like, but at the same
TV shows, a new trilogy.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, do I really want that if it means that they might not be as good or as well developed or whatnot?
Yeah.
Kind of just a weird thing to think about.
And like the new Harry Potter series is going every 2 years, and I mean, it remains to be seen if that works out for them, but I feel like they're building up the anticipation a lot better than Star Wars is, because the next Star Wars movie is in a few months.
Yeah, in May.
Yeah.
So
Is that wait? Is that
Solo.
9?
Solo.
Okay.
Solo.
Good. Because I had heard
Yeah.
other people say otherwise, and I was like, it better not be releasing 9 this
Oh
early.
no.
Like,
And then I think episode 9, after the May release, they're going to be going back to the December released in 2019. So that's going to be over a year with no Star Wars, pretty much.
Yeah, that will be, and I feel like that might be good,
mhm.
but I still
It's good, but two, it's like
It's
I want
it's a
I
bummer.
want more of the story.
Yeah.
Which and we can't get TV shows because the Rebels is ending soon. So
I did hear a rumor, and I don't know how true it is, that Star Wars might be getting a live action TV show.
in 2019,
Oh, it's 2019?
it's possible. Yes, I'm worried about that because that could go really well or really bad.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think there's a flood of Star Wars content, and I think a lot of audiences are getting kind of tired of it.
Mm.
Like just general audiences, not even the fans. Because
I have a lot of books to read.
Well, yeah. And another thing, I enjoyed seeing Rogue One, but I feel like they should have waited until they'd finished this trilogy to release it. Because, like, my parents walked into The Last Jedi, and the last Star Wars that they had seen was Rogue One.
Right.
So they were confused for the first little while as to who was who and what was going on, because they hadn't seen The Force Awakens in over a year.
Yeah, I get that. I can understand. Like, I mean, I'm kind of the same way. I hadn't seen Force Awakens in a long time before I had watched Last Jedi. And
I mean, I would watch Force Awakens before I even go to the movie.
yeah, I ended up doing that the second time, and I think that's partially why I enjoyed it more.
Yeah. And I feel like, especially since they keep hiring the same type of person to play the main female characters, it gets a little confusing after a while as to which British brunette is which.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah, I understand Kathleen Kennedy's decision to go towards a more female-led Star Wars, but when all the females start blending together, it's kind of like,
And like,
there's a problem here.
And Rose would have been a good departure from that, but she isn't the main female character.
Right.
Should we go to our character list?
Yeah, let's do it.
Alright, who's on the page? What should we start with?
BB-8, of course.
I don't... Yeah, BB-8, let's start with that guy.
I mean...
I was mostly joking, but yeah, let's do BB-8.
No, I have a thing to say about BB-8. I feel like a lot of comedy with BB-8 did not work out with me.
Oh, yeah?
It didn't feel like Star Wars, BB-8 shooting the coins out like a machine gun and blowing it. It's like,
Okay, so
yeah.
For me, it reminded me of Episode 3, R2-D2, which isn't particularly a bad thing, but that's like what they did with R2 in the prequels. Kind of strayed from, like, in the originals, he's just this droid that, he's just a droid. He has a holographic projector, but that's like his one appeal.
Well, he has a bit of personality, but
right.
Yeah, it's like in the prequel trilogy, they kind of blew it up a bit.
Yeah, yeah. They what I'm saying more is like, so in the prequel trilogy, like, he like straight up zaps somebody, He flies at one point. Things like that. That it's like, okay, but why aren't we seeing this later on?
Yeah.
And so like seeing BB-8 do certain things was like, oh, that's funny, but
Well, like for me, it feels like they're really self-aware that there's an audience and they need to put on some comedy, and that's just in-your-face comedy when BB-8 does that.
yeah.
And also another point that I just really groaned at is near the end of the movie when Finn was battling Captain Phasma, and one of the ATSTs or whatever you call that thing starts firing at the troopers, which I think pretty much everyone thought that would be DJ's character, but
Oh yeah.
it turned out to be BB-8. I thought, just suspension of disbelief. I don't think that is possible.
And like, this is the thing too. Like, the cool thing about the original trilogy with the droids is that they were kind of the non-sided like storytellers. I like BB-8 and I think he's cute and I think they did good marketing with him. But like, I kind of wish he was less on one person's side and more, I don't know.
So here's the thing: in this movie, BB-8 did not serve a purpose, and usually characters they have a purpose to hold. In the last movie, BB-8 had the map to Luke Skywalker throughout the entire movie, and they were going after that one droid. Here, the droid just tags along, and he doesn't really do anything to help the plot.
Yeah.
And same thing with the Porgs.
Well,
Nah, dude, the Porgs are the best characters.
yeah.
No, like there are a couple scenes, where the Porgs are cute, but it comes to a point where they're getting in your face, and I kind of feel like the fourth wall is being broken a lot because there's a lot of scenes where they're staring straight at the camera, especially during the Battle of Crate where Porgs are interrupting Chewbacca and they're looking straight at the camera and screaming, and the tension is broken and no one was laughing in the theater. It just felt awkward.
Yeah.
I would say I like the Porgs, and I feel like Star Wars is going to have obvious marketing tactics.
Yeah.
And the Porgs are creatively used enough that, they don't bother me the way that maybe the Ewoks bothered some people or Jar Jar Binks.
Right. Yeah, I will say they were a lot less annoying because, like, they had that cute aspect to them. And it was kind of like, okay, so this is some of the wildlife of, was it Oct-9?
Octo.
Oct-2, okay. It was like, okay, so this is the wildlife. It's kind of annoying, but it's different. It has a distinct look, obviously, for marketing, but, I could get behind cute animals. But it was like...
The more they showed up, the less
I think
cute they were.
I think they didn't really need to make as many appearances beyond Oct-2. Like, after Oct-2, I would have been totally fine with just, like, the little crystal wolf things. Those were cool.
It made sense why they would even have Porgs to begin with, because, the island they were working on, there were a bunch of puffins flying everywhere.
Yeah.
And so, in order to fix that, they would change the puffins into Porgs in the background, and you can actually see that as the movie progresses.
Yeah, and I think
did
that's
hear. Cool. I heard one kind of smart idea of what they could do with the Porgs of turning them into a commentary on invasive species, by just sort of like putting them, on whatever First Order base they use next time. Just like maybe in the background, and then have that like they've taken over the galaxy. I think it would be kind of funny, but
I think that might be too much. But
So now that we got those smaller characters,
Um,
well, let's go big and talk about Ray.
okay.
okay, an improvement.
Is it?
Yeah, kind of. I feel like they don't have a clear time frame for her training.
Oh, you can hardly call
So,
it training.
yeah, and I think that's one of the bigger problems that the movie has is she still doesn't feel like she's earned her powers
Hmm.
the way that Luke
Yeah,
did.
That I feel like is probably my biggest problem with the current trilogy is just that like it doesn't feel like she's earned it.
so there's a theory going on that Rey is probably another Anakin, where she was just conceived by the Force.
I've heard that too. I having seen a couple interviews with her, it seems like that is likely not the case.
Of course.
But I don't know.
Yeah, you know, it's
Yeah.
it's yeah, we don't know until they figure that
Yeah,
out.
yeah. And obviously like whatever, I don't know if Johnson is queued up for this next movie, but um
He's probably an advisor to
yeah.
Abrams.
But like either way, like it's kind of up to the next director to figure out who um who she really is, because like the past two kind of haven't. Like okay,
Yeah,
so in Force Awakens it was like she's just this junker who is desperately hoping for her parents to come back, but gets caught up and finds out she's Force sensitive, and ends up helping out the Resistance. In the second one, it's like, okay, she's met Luke Skywalker, and is trying to get him to train her, but it's all led down the motive of finding her parents and out who she is. And regardless, the whole time, there's like the only moral dilemma, and I'm using quotes in that, is when the two scenes where she succumbs to the dark side, where she's just like meditating and then, oh, there's dark and cracks now, and they kind of brush that aside.
Yeah.
And obviously like later, like she pulls out a lightsaber to attack Luke, and that's like, okay. But like it still seemed like there was no moral dilemma. Like when Kylo offers to let her like rule alongside him, she is like, no, that's not a good thing to do. But I don't see any motive behind that. Like she's just trying to find out who her parents are. Obviously she doesn't want, it seems like she doesn't want Finn to die, but that's, and probably Leia, but those are like, and Chewie, but those are like the only people that she's really attached to. Like Han Solo got killed, Leia was really only there for that hug at the end, and yeah, I don't know, it just seemed like her character, they've kind of painted to be like the perfect character, powerful, female, strong, morally upright, but like there just seems to be very little development to her. I feel like the first movie had more development in that regard.
I do find it interesting that they're doing the sort of romance with Kylo Ren, because that adds a lot to her character. That was to both of their characters, actually.
I don't want that to be a thing.
But I mean, when you think about it, we've never really had that in the Star Wars, at least in the main Star Wars universe.
Right.
So it adds sort of a layer of complexity.
Yeah, I mean, I'm alright with.
But
with
it
Reylo.
seems out of nowhere.
Yeah, and
And
It could have
I don't
been.
think that could be a thing now since the betrayal
Oh,
in
no.
the movie.
Well,
so.
yeah. But like, I feel like with their connection with the Force, they could have pushed that.
It could have.
Both of them were having problems with their mentors at the time. Like, they were having a similar situation for a lot of it. And so it's like, oh, okay, I could see how they could push together. What I kind of hoped for was kind of like a mid-ground type of thing where somebody brought up it would be cool if Rey and Kylo switch sides.
yeah.
Yes.
And I thought that would be pretty cool, but that obviously didn't happen.
And I do believe that some fans would be upset that Kylo Ren could be reformed because, in their eyes, since he killed Han Solo, you can't come back from that. Because they're not gonna forgive him for
But
that.
okay, this is the thing. Like, at least in my eyes, like that's the whole moral dilemma of the original trilogy. That like nobody is so far gone that they can't be saved.
It's not an issue with how that thing works because I watched My Little Pony and most of the villains have been reformed.
Well,
It's getting old, but
yeah.
makes sense. My concern is with the audience reaction of Kylo Ren being reformed.
Yeah, but I
There's-
mean, at the same time, I feel like this whole movie was a big like declaration of we don't care what the fans think. We're gonna make our own story, which I'm not saying is a bad thing by any means. I feel like a lot of places should do that, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I think they're kind of stuck in an awkward position right now where you know, The Last Jedi is this very strong movie and it makes some very strong creative decisions.
Hmm.
And so now they have to decide, do they blink and, change stuff because the fans have said that, or do they stick their ground and risk losing even more fans?
Hmm.
And yeah.
Really, there's no right decision because people are going to be angry either
Oh
way.
yeah. And I think The Force Awakens was a very safe movie, and I feel that Rogue One was also a very safe movie. They didn't do anything big like The Last Jedi did. So,
Besides killing off
Well,
all the main characters.
yeah, but that wasn't something
Yeah, even that wasn't so
that wasn't
bad.
like a bold creative decision. That was to be expected almost. And
Yeah.
I think The Last Jedi is an interesting movie because it is a turning point for the franchise. And I think years from now, it'll probably be either one of the best or one of the worst, and it depends on what Episode 9 is.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And yeah, I mean, even though the movie felt more complete than The Force Awakens, I feel like the discussion around the movie doesn't feel complete.
Hmm.
Because we haven't yet seen the ramifications of it. So this is
Yeah.
either going to be the Star Wars movie that changed everything, or the Star Wars movie that you can skip because everything that it did was undone.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Well, you couldn't really skip. There's still a bunch of other aspects of the story
Oh, yeah.
that is.
But it really depends on where they're taking the franchise. And
Sure.
yeah, I think there are a lot of better ways that they could have handled the characters. But I feel like there's a direction to the series now. that was missing with The Force Awakens. So it remains to be seen what they decide to do with the characters going forward.
Yeah.
Well, I do hope that Rey is a much better trained Jedi.
Yeah. And I hope she gets her staff lightsaber.
Yes.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are hoping for that.
And like they're hinting it more again here with her training with her staff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And like a non-normal color is probably, I feel like, because we haven't had like an actual explanation of like crystals and anything like that in the movies.
Even the books are very broad on that.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
feel like it would be really cool. And this is something that the Blade Runner sequel did, is they took the original beginning to the first Blade Runner as it was written out in the script, and they put it to begin the second one, even though it was cut out of the first one, sort of as like an Easter egg to all of the fans.
Right.
And so I feel like they could do the scene with Luke making his lightsaber and do that in episode 9 with
That could be
Rey.
cool. Yeah.
And
yeah, especially show the process of getting the lightsaber crystal, by connecting with it,
yeah,
and so forth.
and that would be
Well, and
that
if
would be
they,
fun.
yeah, if they tied in like even the planet from Rogue One, even just mentioning it, because that was like a huge
Oh yeah,
kyber crystal like export thing.
I mean, there's that. There's Ilum. There's a bunch of places where you can get crystals.
Yeah. It's just like, you've got universes, why not roll with it?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know what color she would be. Probably blue is where they want to go.
I'm thinking blue, or I think there's a high potential for like a yellow or an orange or something. Like we've already seen them change the entire logo just because reasons. So
Well, no, the logo isn't so much changed, because the logo was red for the Revenge of the Sith.
was it?
Yeah.
Huh.
For the advertisement, it's still yellow in the movie, but for the advertisements, it's
I guess it was yellow in the movie here too, right?
Yeah.
Or was it?
it was.
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. The only time they ever changed the colors was in the Clone Wars, when the center of the episode was for the villains.
Hmm. Interesting.
Yes. Did anyone notice the Jedi books?
oh yeah, that Rey had taken them.
I heard a lot of people saying that. I didn't really.
It goes by really quickly. You can easily miss it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
thought
but
I saw it
it's in
the
the
first
ship,
time.
right?
It's in the ship. You can briefly see the books in the shelf for a quick second before they close
Uh-huh.
it.
Yeah, I thought I saw them the first time, but since it wasn't made a big deal out of, I just thought nothing of it. But when I saw it the second time, and Yoda said that everything,
The knowledge in the
yeah,
books, Rey already has.
and then I'm like, okay.
I love Yoda.
I think
Yeah, and they,
as a Force Ghost, that was an excellent choice. Using Yoda instead of Kenobi. Obviously, from like an actor
Yes.
standpoint too, because like obviously his actor has passed away. But Yoda was just a cool like, hey, this is callbacks, and this is a fun character, and he's one of the few characters that can bring wisdom and humor.
So, I will say that I feel like Kenobi should have made a small appearance. Not as a talking role, but during the end of the scene where they show Luke and Yoda sitting together, I feel like they should have ended that scene with like a shadowy figure appearing next to them, and then they go on to the next scene. You know, that would have been a cool way to end it.
Yeah, I
but,
could be down for that.
that scene was actually ended abruptly because the music did not finish its tune. And that's something that I caught during the movie, and it's kind of annoying me.
Interesting.
I do think, and it might have been a deliberate artistic choice because I know that Ryan Johnson, he plays a lot with expectations. Like, there was that scene with the iron, and
Oh yeah,
then
that
another
was.
one of, I was thinking about it again,
So
and during the lightsaber battle, there's a
during the
moment.
scene with the iron, when that thing first started, my mom turned to me and was like, "Oh, that thing looks like an
Yeah,
iron,"
my mom did the
and then
same.
it's revealed
My
it's an iron.
grandmother
It's
said
like,
the same thing.
They're like, "Oh,
huh?
why do they have irons in space?" And I'm like, "It's not an iron. It's an iron."
I was about to say that as well. It's like, oh, okay. Uh, kind of a pointless joke. Kind
It
of,
was,
again, at something like that, kind of broke the fourth wall for me. It's like, okay.
I think, yeah. I think that one worked for me, and a lot of the Star Wars humor that people have sometimes been complaining about works for me. But I do see, like, with Poe's conversation with
No,
Hux,
no,
like,
that went on far too
yeah,
long.
and that feels like something from a Marvel movie more than from Star Wars. And then there's certain things like in The Force Awakens, Finn has a line. He asks Rey if she has a cute boyfriend, and that just doesn't feel very Star Wars.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there.
And especially
Boyfriend?
the
Got
reason why
boyfriend?
the whole Poe and Hux conversation doesn't work is that you're starting the movie off with that whole thing, and that's actually,
Oh,
to me, that was kind of a weak joke to start off
yeah,
with.
I agree. I mean, it was kind of funny in that like that happens way too frequently when I'm like Skyping someone. It's like, hey, are you? Can you actually hear me? Or are you just like messing with me? Like that was kind of like, oh, ha, I get that. But at the same time, it was also like, eh,
It's Star
yeah,
Wars.
like,
Are they really doing this?
And
yeah,
Another small nitpick here when they first open up the movie. Um, Normally in Star Wars fashion, they would start off in space,
mhm,
and then they would go down to the planets. The
right,
actual ship itself would go down. Here, it start off in space, zoomed in like on the ships, and then suddenly you're on the planet. For me that broke immersion as well, because it's like, oh, it's continuity. No, no, doesn't work.
oh yeah, and they never said I've got a bad
Because
feeling about this.
yeah, oh well, that's fine, but the reason why that caught my attention was because it looked like they were setting something up, but it kind of looked like they cut it out for time.
mm,
Yeah.
I could see that. Yeah,
So are we ready to move on to the next character?
yeah.
Kylo Ren.
Let's do
Yeah.
Kylo. Yeah, I like that.
I think they did a better job with him in this movie than they did in the last movie.
I like him in this
Yeah.
movie.
He's his character is starting to take shape,
Yeah,
and yeah, I mean, he's become more interesting to watch. And like I said, his romance with Rey is a big part of that.
mm-hmm.
And then when he killed Snoke, that was another like big character moment for him.
Yeah, and frankly, like Nostalgia Critic put it in the way that like it that whole scene is basically the Vader kills the Emperor scene. But at the same time, when I went to watch it, I honestly didn't expect it.
Yeah.
And the audience cheered when it happened.
Right.
And it's followed up by a big epic fight.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
yeah.
fight was
It's
tons of fun.
and it's like it's one of those, I don't know that they've necessarily ever done something quite that big in Star Wars. Like they've had, Anakin turns to the dark side in episode 3, but everyone knew that was coming. And then even with Darth Vader's redemption,
Hmm.
it was still, there was enough leading up to it. Whereas with
Yeah.
this one, it was just very sudden. And
And it's a good choice, but then again, we know nothing about Snoke. which would be fine, except he's such an influential character to these other characters, because he was one reason why Kylo Ren turned to the dark side, and we still know nothing about that. He seems to be some kind of political rival to Leia, and we just still don't know much about that at all. And now that his character is dead, it's like, okay, so he's obviously this powerful being who can use the Force from across, away, and do it in such a very controlling way.
Yeah.
But he is killed off easily, and it's like, okay, so who is this guy? And I feel like we're probably not gonna get that in the next movie,
Yeah.
because I don't know how.
And like, just from like a moviegoer standpoint, we lost Andy Serkis, dude. Like,
Yeah.
I'm so sad.
So I'm just guessing, and something, if they're not gonna address this character in the movie, they have to address his character in an upcoming book or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it's gonna be really a no.
Well, and I'm sure they'll probably bring him in for something like animated, or I don't know, even just referencing him in something would be almost enough.
And I do like, it does play with your expectations a little bit of, and I think that's something that Rian Johnson does, even like narratively.
good.
Like, yeah, I mean, it's one of those genuinely surprising moments. But yeah, I think the character was still lacking. One thing I did like about Snoke, I really liked how, in the Force Awakens, you think he's this super tall person.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
you see him in this one, and you're like, oh no, he's normal human size. And then when you see him right by Rey, you're like, oh wait, he's actually quite a bit larger.
Yeah,
Just
even
not
still.
as much as you thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and like another thing was, okay, this threw me off. I didn't like the golden robes. I just didn't.
Yeah.
Well,
I
Yeah.
think if he had black robes on, or like gray, like he had kind of in like the hologram type of thing.
so for me, I didn't really mind the robe so much, because I feel like the color contrast between the red and the gold was actually a nice color. But yeah, I do see that his gold color just makes him look like the way that they had a Nostalgia Critic with him, with chest hair
Yeah.
and a smoke pipe.
Yeah, like I don't know.
Yeah.
It wasn't something that like destroyed the movie for me, but it was just like, it really does look like he's just in a bathrobe or something. Like, he doesn't look as menacing.
Also, he has this black ring on his finger, which, Matthew, you have your book?
Oh, yeah. I will look that up as you continue to converse.
Yes, have you noticed the black ring?
I didn't notice it, but I'm looking for it right now.
It's another,
Oh, yeah.
cool aspect that ties into Rogue One again. Matthew, would you like to explain?
Oh, it's from beneath Vader's castle from Rogue
Interesting.
One. So,
We don't know what that's all about. It seems like a cool thing that I hope to see in the future.
yeah, that would be. Maybe we'll get a Snoke origin movie.
I was about to say that we need a Snoke origin movie.
Maybe the Han Solo movie is secretly a Snoke origin movie.
Hey, to be fair, if we're getting a Boba Fett movie for a character that barely appeared on screen, I think we can get a Snoke one.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So back to Kylo Ren.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we've talked so much.
he no longer has his mask.
Yeah, that was an
that's a
interesting
really
choice.
that's a really good decision. I think that he needs
Well,
to be
it's sad that
different.
we don't have the cool looking helmets that it's so Star Wars, but it does make sense for us.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I'm not Vader. I can be better than him. Was kind of like the
Yeah,
thought that I got from it.
it's his line. kill the past.
Yeah. Let the
And
let the
like
past
seems
die.
that he wants to stay away from the dark side. I mean the Sith
Yeah,
training.
and that
Yeah.
that was what really helped his character. I think is that now he's centered around that philosophy
Yeah. Well, I
because
mean, yeah.
and it's a complete 180 from what he did in the last movie, which was obsess over Darth Vader.
Yeah. I'm
But
with you
it's
there.
still, but it still feels like he now has a direction as a character. He now has a purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that.
And I hope to see more of him. See what's up with him in the next movie.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, and that shirtless scene.
Oh man, that thing's been on my Twitter feed for the past month or
Ben
so.
Swallow.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh yeah, being in a Jedi club does wonders for your meme knowledge.
Mm-hmm. It's getting old.
I'm still laughing about it, so I don't know. I don't know what that
So,
says about me.
I found it like an odd choice the way they shot these scenes between Kylo Ren and Rey.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked
How it was really cool, and it's kind of like, oh, that's convenient. You don't need the other actor on set.
it. Really like it uses, and I think that Ryan Johnson in his direction, you see a lot of Hitchcock, and that sort of takes sort of this idea of the shot reverse shot to its extreme of like you're tying two entirely separate locations and obviously separate locations, but you're tying them together through simple shot reverse shot. I mean, they could have used special effects and done all of these cool
You know, the
tricks, but
rain.
yeah, it's so powerful because it's so simple. And I guess another thing, the sort of the show don't tell, or not show don't tell, the Hitchcock said that whenever you want to build suspense rather than have surprise, so that's what the lightsaber scene with Kylo Ren and Snoke was very much building the suspense rather than just having, oh no, Snoke is dead, what happened?
Yeah.
There's a sense of tension, and that's very, very much something that Alfred Hitchcock would have done.
True.
Yep.
Also, it was an interesting note to see, like, because obviously in the last movie, he committed patricide, and in this movie, he was given the opportunity to kill his mother, who, in my humble opinion, based on what I know of their past, which is very little, it seems like his dad was like, hey, no, don't train with Luke, just like stay with us. And his mom was like, no, you should. And that's when things go south. So it seems like his mom is more to blame for it, which I just thought was interesting. But
Yeah.
more onto my point, he decides not to kill her, even though this new philosophy about killing the past or letting it die is running through his veins. It's more like he's realizing that isn't a completely valid philosophy, even if it's a slow realization.
Yeah, and I think that's what's very interesting about his character is that, you know, like any person has these hypocrisies and inconsistencies in their personal beliefs, and that's one of the places where Kylo has it, is like, you know, kill the past, but I don't want to kill my mom.
Yeah.
And then also he's, you know, if you take his philosophy to the logical extreme, he should be burning down the First Order, but he's keeping that. So it's very interesting to see those inconsistencies.
Well, and also, like, he definitely isn't burning down the First Order and stuff, like you said, but he's almost using that as a vehicle to change things. And I think it could be cool if like it does kind of end with Kylo and Rey joining forces to be like, okay, um, this stuff was bad, and like straight up changing the way people think. Well, if I were to compare it to anything, it would be like a Zuko storyline.
Yeah,
I feel
But-
like we're past that at this point.
I don't know.
I do, and I would.
I feel like if you were to do that in the next movie, it would undermine the whole character change of these whole setup here.
Maybe. I think what will be interesting is if Kylo lives through this trilogy, seeing where he is in 20 or 30 years when he is the past.
Mm.
Sort of what his. And he might not survive this trilogy, so we may never get to see that, but.
True.
So.
Is that all on Kylo?
Apparently.
Trying to think if there's anything else. Oh, just an interesting thing between Kylo and Rey. The whole concept of the Force, buffing both sides. So like as one grows more powerful, the other grows more powerful. It's an interesting concept that I kind of struggled with because that's not really what we've seen in the past, I don't think. Everybody in this new trilogy that uses the Force is like, it seems like 10 times more powerful than we've ever seen, which obviously part of that is due to time.
Constrictions.
Yeah. But even like, I don't know, even in like animated stuff and in a lot of old canon, it was like there are certain people that are definitely more powerful or have worked more towards being powerful, but we don't see as many people that are just like straight up powerful like Rey and kind of like Kylo. Obviously, we don't have a full training background for Kylo, but we know that he was always pretty powerful. The only like solace I could find was that after the Return of the Jedi, Anakin as Vader did end up bringing balance to the Force, to some degree, because he was born of the Force and he lived a life of both Jedi and Sith, and then when he died, he was kind of Jedi. Well, like, he was good. He definitely wasn't evil, but he definitely wasn't really a Jedi either. Like, he was in the middle. He was at balance. And so at that point, I feel like that kind of can explain why now both sides of the Force are kind of receiving these, like, if your enemy is powerful, you're powerful. And mostly I'm bringing this up because the scene where they destroy Anakin's lightsaber, because they're so, both Kylo and Rey are balanced in the Force, and so they're trying to pull this lightsaber towards and it breaks. And one, I think that's just a cool looking scene. Two, it does show that, like, Force balanced thing. Three, it sets Rey up for having to make a lightsaber, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And four, it reinforces the theme of let the past die, kill it if you have to. Which is, the more and more I think about it, the more I keep thinking, is that Kylo telling us that, or is that Disney telling us that? Not really sure.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see what happens next.
Yeah.
And I really like the idea of sort of the balance of the Force, and how it sort of played out. So yeah, I'm interested to see what happens, especially since Kylo has sort of rejected the way of the Sith.
Yeah.
What is that going to mean? Or is he still fighting for the dark side, just under a different sort of category?
Mm.
Yeah, I do believe that the current Star Wars universe is heading towards balance, because if you look towards the current season of Rebels, they were pushing, balance in the fourth really hard. You need both sides to open this one box or something. So it's interesting. It's an interesting concept and how that works, and I hope to see that more of that in the future. Another thing about Kylo Ren's character that I thought was an odd choice. It was during the flashback scene when when Luke was about to kill him. So here's the way I'm seeing this. So he wakes up, sees his master with a lightsaber. He takes a swing at him, destroys his house, and then what he does next is apparently he kills a bunch of younglings, destroys the Jedi Temple, and leave.
Yeah.
I wish that we could see where his rationale behind all of that came in. And I do feel like there should have been a lot more time spent in the flashback. Show the actual darkness of the training. Show him being darker. Show what happens. It's a basic storytelling thing called show, don't tell, which is they mainly told in this movie.
I do wonder, though, that may be something that they explore a lot later, because Luke is unconscious for all of that aftermath. So I wonder, was Kylo the only one responsible, or did maybe Snoke come in and...
Well, Snoke had an influence on Kylo Ren. We heard that. So
I wonder if Snoke actually showed up, and that's what happened to the Jedi Temple. Because, and that's something that they would obviously have to go into in a different movie.
No, I don't know. It's a missed opportunity.
Okay, so this is my thought, because I think that's a really good point to bring up. But I feel like what they'll end up doing is this next movie, just based on just the feedback that they're getting from this one. I think a lot of people really liked Kylo in this movie. I'm expecting him to get some Anakin level flashbacks, where he's meditating or something, to try to fuel his anger. I don't really know, and he keeps getting these flashbacks of memories of killing other Jedi in training and
friends.
Yeah, I feel like that's a thing that we're going to almost have to see, just because so far he's kind of just been, oh, this is the bad guy, with little snippets of reason to why he's the bad guy and stuff, but more than ever it feels like he could be a good guy, but the world around him hasn't let him be. And so I think in the next movie they're gonna reinforce some of that rationale of, okay, so this is why you decided after your master kind of considered killing you to kill everybody in your near vicinity. I think that would be intelligent and worth exploring on their part. I don't know. It is an interesting thing to bring up, though. Why? I don't know. If I had woken up to somebody holding a lightsaber over me, I would definitely go in for a swing, but then I would probably be more run away than let's kill everything. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, though.
Yeah. There's some unseen elements that should have been seen, I guess.
Yeah.
So let's move on to some other character.
Well, let's talk about Luke.
I feel like we should save that big conversation
Okay.
towards the end.
Yeah. So, let's transition over to Finn.
All right.
I feel like he's still feeling a bit like a diversity hire. Like, he hasn't done his side plot with Rose felt like, hey, let's get the token characters out of the way.
So he's pretty much his entire character arc is running away
Yeah.
from things, and here, he finally takes up a stand against the whole Captain Phasma, which we can talk about that in a bit. And I do feel like that his character probably should have died at the end.
Oh yeah, I feel like that moment would have brought his character a whole lot. Like, it doesn't work with the bigger themes of the movie, which I'll bring those up later because that's a whole different discussion. But I feel like they had the perfect opportunity to send his character off in a way that felt good, but they kind of missed it.
Instead, they push it off for some message about we don't fight what we hate, we save what we love.
Yeah, and
kind of
it ties in with the themes of the movie, which I'll bring up in more detail later, but I do feel like the character wasn't doing anything. And so, usually when a character isn't doing anything, that's the perfect opportunity to give them a final moment.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know. I think you guys are right. I don't know about the whole, maybe sacrifice yourself for the good of everybody else. That wouldn't be a bad way to go, but I think because he's one of the few characters that actually interacts with our protagonist, Rey, who she actually should care about, unlike most everybody in this movie, by the way. I feel like they can easily tie a lot of emotional baggage to his death. Like, maybe he did die in this episode, and that kind of is one of the last straws that kind of tears her, maybe pushes her a little bit more towards the dark side, makes her stagger in her step, brings up some sort of morality.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I would say, unless they're planning on going with the romance with Finn, or Finn and Poe, I don't honestly see any way that his character is going to be interesting.
I feel like that's more of a one-way romance.
Yeah, and obviously
you can see that
they
here.
didn't do anything with it, I think, and
it was subtle.
Yeah, it was very subtle, but I think that if they aren't going to do anything with that, then there's no real reason to keep Finn alive, because he feels like it's awesome that they're trying to expand the types of characters that can be main characters in Star Wars movies, but they haven't really given Finn anything to do, so he still feels like a token character.
Yeah.
So, there's also, in this movie, there's a lot of action that don't actually serve their goal. Or they do, but they don't actually come out with anything.
Well, yeah, like the whole...
And so that action just becomes pointless. The whole Counterbite, the whole journey going to Counterbite to get the Codebreaker, free the deer-looking thing, go on the spaceship, to go through, converse all this thing, and your main goal is to turn off this thing, but you don't actually get to turn off the thing, and so then you don't gain anything. So that was pointless. And then the second time is the whole Battle of Crate. So these things are flying. They're not even shooting anything. They're like, okay, we're gonna line up, try to destroy that battering ram. Like, oh crap, it's too powerful. Let's turn away. Then Finn, he has a moment to make it worth something. But no, Rose comes in, just knocks him away. The battering ram breaks down the door, and so that entire sequence was pointless.
Yeah.
And that sequence, I felt that sequence had some good parts in it, unlike the whole Canto Bite thing, which was just very, very pointless. I mean, I love like the establishing shots, like when they show the whole place, and then with all of the different creatures inside the casino, those are really cool. But the storyline there itself is really, it feels too prequel.
And for me, I feel like the pod racing scene did a better job than what they had here, because after the pod race, they got what they wanted. They won. They got the parts they needed, and then they moved on. Here, they tried, they failed, and then they stumble on yada yada, whole mumble jumble. Hey, this other character comes in, you know.
And
yeah, and okay, so this is one minor thing. Sorry to like butt in for this specific part, but the alien that finds the ship on the beach, why speak English? Why was that the choice? I'm not opposed to it, but
he's
like
played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, so they had to give him a role. But yeah,
and also I don't think they really wanted to put subtitles on this movie.
I don't think they should have. I think he should have been speaking in a different language, and then when they cut to them being like arrested, it'll be like, oh, they did something wrong, even though they're the good guys, and this is what they get for it. It's like, oh, okay, well, yeah, they're not being super careful, and they probably should be. I don't know.
And
beyond that, like a southern like Texas accent.
Yeah,
it just took away the immersion.
And that whole scene is very like that whole part. I don't know, especially like with the creatures running wild. I don't know their names, and it's just like it's the most
the fathers.
Something
like that.
And it's the most it's prequel in like the bad sense.
Yeah.
Where it's it feels very childish, and it doesn't really have any consequence, and there's a lot of CGI and very obvious CGI, and it just sort of it takes you out of the movie.
So the only thing that I can see good that came out of the whole counterbite thing was to show, how the First Order got their weapons and stuff.
Yeah, I think that was a really good thing of like these arms dealers.
But that could have been done better.
Yeah,
to be honest.
And I mean that's one of the interesting things. I feel like that though fits in Rogue One more than it fits in here. Sort of like both sides are being supplied by these arms dealers.
Yeah,
because I don't think
to agree.
The Last Jedi didn't do anything with it, whereas Rogue One was very much about the darkness on both sides.
Right.
Whereas this one isn't not about the darkness on both sides, but it's a lot more cut and dry than Rogue One was.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna make the same complaint that I made for The Last Jedi, is that for the whole thing with that counterbite, they're really the only reason why they have that was to show off all of the cool looking alien designs. My issue with the new designs is that I don't mind that we have new looking alien characters.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is there's still a universe with the same alien species that I want to see them populate, because they are the most native in most things. A Rhodian, most commonly in any place. Even a Twi'lek, a Togruta, and all those other species, they travel around space. They went to a bunch of places, and I don't see them anywhere here. It kind of feels like, oh, this is not the same universe as we had before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a small nitpick. All you need is just one Rhodian to have there, and that's all I want. Just
Yeah.
one Rhodian.
And I think part of that is the temptation of you get to work on Star Wars, so you know, do as much as you can. But yeah, I do agree that, we've seen a lot of new alien species, and it would be nice to see callbacks. And those are the types of callbacks that work well because it expands the universe rather than, two random characters from A New Hope showing
it's
up
not
in Rogue
so
One.
much. It's not so much as a callback. It's more like this universe doesn't feel as lived in as it was before.
Yeah. Yeah, hopefully that's one thing that
I mean, and and it's hard for me. I can't really give examples by going into saying like, oh, these species are everywhere in Rebels and Clone Wars. I can't really do that because animation budget. They can't just be constantly creating new species. They have to reuse the same asset. So
yeah.
that makes sense. But here, if it's the same universe, I don't see why these characters aren't around. Okay.
Yeah.
I can get that.
And also, Counterbite kind of feels too much like Vegas and not its own thing.
Yeah, I do. It does feel the most like Earth-like of anything in this movie. And I don't know. I like the setting itself, but I do think that what they did there wasn't really all that interesting.
Yeah, I would have to agree.
I mean, and it's all very pretty, but
Yeah.
maybe, and I think they should have done more to make it obvious that, this is one area on this giant desert planet.
Yeah.
Like, really, besides the one shot that you get from space of it, there's no indication of that. So if you aren't paying really close attention, you don't even notice that.
True. Well, and that whole scene, like, so that was another one that I initially struggled with, because it was like, it felt very politically, like, forced. Like, oh, rich people are bad because they abuse animals and they have money. It's like, well,
yeah, it's
that's
pushing an agenda.
Right, and that's the way initially I looked at it. When I watched it a second time, I struggled with that, and I came to this conclusion. This scene, in the whole theme of balance, is the concept of excess. Like, everything in moderation should be how it works. With Luke's whole scene of going around and like getting milk and fish and things like that, he's not taking more than he needs. He's apparently going out each day and getting what he needs that day and living off of that. Whereas in this scene, we're seeing people feasting, and animals being mistreated. Now, if they had just shown those animals being raced without them being whipped or hurt or anything, it wouldn't have been as bad. And that's kind of the point that I'm seeing, is that, like, because they were desiring too much and consuming so much, that was the bad part about it. But that definitely wasn't the way it was framed. So that was kind of a problem with the movie. I think there's a way to think past the problem, but that was definitely a concern for me at the time.
Yeah. And it feels very forced. Like, I think Rose as a character has a good backstory, but just the way that it was worded and said, it felt like it was trying to push an agenda and not just incorporating something from the real world into Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of her stuff was very cheesy.
Yeah, I feel
Yeah.
like, and it's really unfortunate because there are very few Asian characters in big movies, and even fewer Asian women. And the fact that this character, a lot of the character just didn't, the lines that were written, the dialogue, it just didn't feel good. And so,
Yeah.
and they kind of, they took their two minority representation characters and set them on their own plot line, and
Yeah.
you know,
Just to have
got them out of
enough
the way
scenes.
of
Yeah.
got them out of the way of the main story, so that
Right. And I feel like at least watching John Boyega, I like his acting, and I like from the interviews that I've seen, he seems like a cool person. I feel like he was very underutilized as a character in this. I don't know. Rose was just not important.
yeah, and that's like when you look back at Rogue One, all of the characters, even the minority characters, they had these roles, and they had presence, and they did important things. And then here, the entire Canto Bite scene, it doesn't lead to anything.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I'm with you there. Like, it was cool to see a new planet, but
It does, however,
So-
fulfill the requirement that every Star Wars movie has to have a giant monster in it.
Yeah.
true.
So, like, Canto Bites, like, a couple weeks before the movie, they released a book called Tales of Canto Bites, where, a bunch of different characters, having their life on Canto Bites. And that was actually a fun read. People were excited for Canto Bite. But you don't actually see much of that in the movie, which is a shame because,
Mhm.
it's cool to see the planet, but there's really no point in it.
Yeah. Oh, I did. Since we are talking about Rose now, I guess this can kind of be our transition.
To
I do really
Rose.
like her storyline with her sister was really touching, and then
Mhm.
Yeah.
sort of how she's geeking out about seeing Finn. That was all. That was interesting to see. Sort of like,
It was cute, but it didn't seem to actually fit continuity
Yeah.
for me.
and that's the question of how much time passes in this movie. It isn't really all that clear.
Yeah.
Another nitpick is the symbolism of the yin and yang.
Yeah, that was
Symbol?
one thing that was like, okay, it's not like pushed to the forefront, like, hey, we're doing this, but it was like, okay, this is a necklace that fits with another necklace, kind of like those heart things, but for sisters. And it's very similar to another symbol that just so happens to go along with the theme of the movie. So
And,
That's
that was subtle. And then, kind of.
Yeah.
And then, there was a scene later in the movie when Luke's talking to Rey. And there's this small little pool of water. And in it you have the yin and yang symbol much more clearly defined. And it's like, oh, okay, now you're pushing it, movie.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, Rose?
They could have handled her character better,
Of course.
and
Yeah.
especially and at the end with her getting Poe out of the way, that she kind of ruined that moment, or not Poe, Finn. She ruined that moment for Finn, and then she had this whole little, we should save each other instead of fighting the things that we hate, and it's nice message, but the way it was worded and the way that it sort of happened.
And you force a small little romance
Yeah,
there.
and like the unrequited love thing is always fun to see, especially when
I saw that
yeah.
coming from the very
But
beginning.
yeah,
though.
it was very unnaturally forced into that moment.
Yeah, well, okay. This is the thing. I don't think it would have been as bad of a moment if they didn't kiss. Cause if it was just we need to be saving what we love.
Could you even call that a kiss?
It was a kiss.
It was a peck.
Well, yeah, but even still, she was about to pass out because of reasons. So.
Oh, she should probably be dead or something.
Or something. But like, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to her being dead. But
I feel bad for the actress.
yeah, I mean, she seems like a nice lady, but just
she deserves a better character.
yeah.
And hopefully she gets it in the next movie. But
Speaking
I don't
of...
think
Sorry.
Oh yeah.
Continue.
I don't think it's the actress's fault.
No, I would have to agree.
So I guess continuing with the whole counter bite thing, we should probably go to DJ for a bit.
Don't join.
That's his name.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's continuing the Star Wars tradition started by Rogue One of a highly respected actor coming into Star Wars and doing a weird thing with his voice and it not working out.
We did that in Rogue One.
Forrest Whitaker.
Yes. No, I feel like his voice was fine.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, Forrest Whitaker.
Save the rebellion.
Forrest Whitaker's
Save
voice
the dream.
was less distracting than the weird snake lisp.
As stutter that just wasn't very consistent.
Yeah.
It was like
another thing. It's also very convenient that they just run into another master codebreaker.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, so what's he doing laying in jail when he can just open the door automatically?
Well, and this was my thought. Is I thought like that was going to be him. Like, oh, they stumbled upon him because they were looking for this guy, but that was just so that they could find him. Or maybe the guy that had the red flower.
I was hoping for that.
I was like, oh, well, maybe he won it in a gamble, and that's why this dude's in jail and whatever. But like, I don't know.
Yeah, it removes the specialness of the master codebreaker if there's two of them.
Yeah,
and they just stumble upon him, and he's like,
yeah.
Is there one in every jail in the galaxy?
Well, who knows?
I don't know. I don't have much to say about him, but
I mean, I like how he betrays them.
Yeah.
And how they're very surprised by that, but I mean, the voice and the coincidences and everything, the character didn't really stay in my mind. There wasn't any staying power there.
I feel like he should have been the one who saved the characters.
Yeah, that would have also been. But also, I don't want to ever see him again, so.
Okay.
So.
I don't know. I feel like we could. Just a small little.
Yeah, maybe
part.
like Jar Jar Binks in Revenge of the Sith.
One line, excuse me.
Yes.
Or I don't know, even like we didn't really have Maz in this one.
Oh yeah.
But we also kind of did something small.
Her cameo was kind of obviously pushed to be a cameo.
But I mean, yeah. It didn't. That one didn't bother me.
No, not as much, but it is kind of like, it's not really
Yeah.
important.
Especially since we haven't really established.
I thought she was supposed to be like a major character for the whole trilogy since she's a bigger actress.
Yeah. Well, of course, Lupita Nyong'o can't get any work, but
Eh.
okay. We should, while we're still on this plot line, we should probably quick jump over to Phasma.
I have a thing to say about her.
Speaking of disappointment, continue.
Oh, it's even bigger disappointment with me. You guys can say your piece.
I mean, you got Brienne of Tarth from Game of Thrones, and they just keep on not using her. And it's really like, either use her or don't. And I feel like if they bring her back for the next one, I'm going to be a little bit angry. Unless they give her a significant role, because at this point, she's an advertisement for her book.
Yes. Her book, like Phasma in her book, a comic book, it's a great character. Her entire character is basically she's like a DJ. She doesn't really take sides. She's not fully into the First Order. She leans towards the side that has the more power, the more threatening of the group, and so you have all that. And her comic book was awesome. You know, it showed that she escaped the trash compactor, and that another character discovered that she turned down the shield, and so she just hunted him and killed him so that he wouldn't tell anyone else. And you know, she was actually a threatening character, and so I was kind of excited to see her character in this movie. But they pushed that entire character that was given in the books aside, and we get this nothing in this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the Finn picking up the what's it called? The what is the
electro set.
Yeah, it's like the Tonfa style thing. But anyways, that was kind of cool. It was like shout outs to him being a traitor.
It was. I feel like Phasma should have been the one that said traitor, and so that could be like a bit of a parallel where she had the thing, and then this next time he had the thing.
Right. Yeah, I think, I don't know. I liked him having that. I don't know why she has a spear, and why she felt the need to not just shoot him.
And apparently her armor can deflect bullets. Blaster
That's
bullets.
pretty cool. That was like,
yeah,
hey, that's nice. That makes sense why it's so shiny and stuff. But,
get off my painting.
Exactly my thought, too.
So,
Cat.
shall we move on to the other plot line?
Which one? The whole, the whole Poe and Holdo plot.
So, I have a theory about Poe and his character. And I think that as I've been sort of reading different things and listening to different interviews, what it looks like is that Leia is sort of training Poe to be the next resistance leader.
Of course.
So, she's throughout the movie you see let me think, like the whole first battle, you know, he makes this decision and it ends up bad, and then she demotes him and everything, and that sort of then I think she has a plan for him. And so she's sort of been working out this plan, but then of course she gets, you know, knocked into a coma. And then my thought was that Holdo kind of knows of this plan. So the reason that she doesn't tell Poe any of the plan is to sort of like get him frustrated, and then at the last moment show him what she was planning, and he'll be like, oh, that's why, you don't always charge in head first. But then that sort of backfired on her.
Yeah.
And I feel like we should have seen some of that in this movie.
Well,
And
yeah.
and they can't really do it that well in the next movie because, of course, Carrie Fisher, she passed away, and Laura Dorn's character is dead now. So, who knows?
Yeah, and I mean, and then you see Poe has, I think, the best sort of, or at least the clearest character arc, because at the beginning.
But there's a problem with his arc.
Well, yeah.
Though. And you can finish your thought.
So, yeah, and he starts out the movie as like he's sort of just a second.
So, Toa.
Hey.
So he starts out the movie, and he's sort of this headstrong pilot, and Leia's sort of trying to groom him to be the next leader, and then, he makes a lot of hot-headed decisions, suffers the consequences of those, and then at the end of the movie, the pilots are rushing towards the laser, and Finn is going to run into it, and Poe says no. And so he's doing the opposite of what he had done before. And then when they're in the cave and he says to follow the foxes, everyone looks back at Leia and she's like, what are you looking at me for?
Yeah.
He said to follow them. So, yeah.
Yeah, and especially this being Carrie Fisher's last movie, I assume the next movie will probably start out with, like, a statement of some kind addressing that, and
hopefully like some kind of funeral type scene.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I don't know, like, I think you're right. I think Poe's definitely going to be the next leader. I think that makes sense. Like that makes sense as to why Holdo thought it would be right not to tell him.
And I think it's also that I think he also wants to be the leader.
Yeah.
Because if you saw the scene, when they were saying, Admiral Akbar is dead, Leia's in a coma, it's like, it's obvious who the next leader is. Like, he looks up, is like, is it gonna be? It's like, oh, it's Holdo. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at it from that angle, it fixes the plot holes, but it doesn't change the fact that they should have done something more obvious, I feel, to make audiences go, oh, wait, those weren't plot holes.
But
I feel like,
Yeah.
I mean, the way that they did it, it made Holdo look really, like,
Foolish,
unintelligent, and
Yeah.
it made, which I don't think her character is unintelligent, and I don't think that's
Yeah.
what the movie was trying to say, but that's how it comes off.
I kind of like saw her being unintelligent like the third time I watched the movie, because Poe specifically asks Holdo 3 times, what is the plan? And she answers with, you're being foolish.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you idiot, and kind of thing. Is like, okay, now I see what's the problem with her character.
Well, and like,
But-
the actress in all the interviews, I was like, oh, she's in this. She looks like she's fun and stuff. The purple hair was cool. And easily, probably the most beautiful shot in the movie, in my opinion, was that shot of her going full light speed into it wasn't a Star Destroyer, but was it technically a Star Destroyer? I don't know, but it was the Snoke's ship. Yeah.
Ship. Well, she took her time to finally get to that
Yeah.
decision.
Well, and it does bring up a couple problems scientifically. Like, if
It's Star Wars, no science.
this is the thing, like, I would assume it only destroyed like that part of the ship because it was so close when it jumped. But at the
Mhm.
same time, in the previous movie, we saw Han and Chewie going through a shield at light speed just to get there, and like their ship wasn't destroyed. So I think they could explain that a little bit better.
I
Oh,
did.
they're not
I
going
watched
to.
an
Well,
official
but
interview with like um the people behind the continuity, and they had done an analysis beforehand to see if it broke any continuity, and they decided that it was the size of the ships that
Yeah,
so
they're massive.
well,
that
okay,
that was how they explained what happened. And then with the Force Awakens, it's like a very specific kind of shield, I think.
right, but at the same time,
But
with the
yeah,
with the vastness of a galaxy, I feel like ships would have to. Well, I mean, course correcting at the speed of light is very hard to do. So either the ship has to already know where it's going, like know exactly where not to go, or it has to be able
yeah.
to go through objects like
Um,
planets and such.
and in the extended universe, the reason that they don't explore the unknown regions is because there's no hyperspace lanes. So I feel like it does take an immense amount of calculation to be exactly right. So I feel like that's why we haven't seen this happen before. But I do think,
And I do believe here with the unexplored regions is that they're dangerous, and I believe that's where the theories is where snow comes from.
yeah. Well, that's a different conversation. But
I want to see I want to see the chiss on the screen.
but yeah, I feel like as great as as Holdo's character was, and I really like Laura Dern in the role, and I think when you do an analysis of it, it actually makes a lot of sense. I feel like her whole storyline felt like it had too many plot holes in it.
Hmm.
I love something I noticed is when Poe was committing the mutiny, everyone is just continuing on in the background and they don't even notice what's going on.
Yeah,
It's like they're pointing guns at our leader. We're just gonna continue doing our jobs.
Mm.
That's an odd
Yeah,
thing.
that's true. Nobody really cared. It wasn't a big shocker. It was like, okay, we're still gonna keep like leaving, but
yeah.
I guess Poe can do this.
Also, they were like Poe's alien friend. I thought he died in the last movie.
Oh yeah, I was rewatching that, and like somebody that looked very similar to him definitely crashed into a wall. So
Maybe he resurrected.
Maybe it's a different character or
oh
something.
dude, I know what happened. Okay, so like he crashed into the wall, but as he's floating around, he used the force to fly back to everybody else.
Oh,
Um, makes sense to me.
yeah. And that's the
Yeah.
moment, that moment with Leia, which I guess we can transition to since
Not.
that was.
No, not
Oh,
yet.
not yet. Okay.
No. I still have a thing about Poe.
Okay.
So, tell me, what's Poe's entire arc, his journey in this whole movie?
Well, he goes from being a hero to being a leader.
Well, yeah,
Mhm.
I would say he goes from wanting to be the hero to being the leader, not because he strictly wants to, but because he needs to. But willing to submit to others at the end of it, willing to listen. I don't know.
So here's the thing. Poe, he has his own comic book series. And here's the problem with his whole arc, this movie. He already learned that arc in the comic book.
Mm.
But guess what? He learned that arc twice in the comic book.
Hey, third time's the charm.
So this is the third time he's learning the same lesson. So yeah, they're kind of being lazy here.
Okay,
I'm saying.
so this is my comment on that. Star Wars needs to stop making comic books.
Well, actually, the Darth Vader comic is really cool.
I'm not saying it isn't, but if Star Wars really wanted to please the fans and create this whole new canon that works well together and they have freedom with, they need to stop making comics without talking to the directors or getting the okay from directors and stuff. Because this is what happens. This is why they did away with the old canon, is because people were just going to be like, hey, this doesn't match up with comics. And frankly...
But here's the thing. The entire story of the comics, they are viewed by the Lucas story group.
Right.
They are, like, done to make sure there's not too much continuity that's changed. But there's still a couple things that slip by that goes not unnoticed. And it makes sense why you wouldn't see the same story arc where he learns the same lessons. Because there's really no reason why you would even look for that. You want to see factual stuff. Okay, did he do this yet? Okay, let's put that here. So... you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, the problem with such a big universe is, you know, your characters, there are things that make them that character, and then if you stray too far from that, then people don't feel like it's the same character anymore. So you end up with a character learning the same lesson 3, 4, 5 times just because, I mean, like, with Iron Man in the Marvel universe, it feels like he's still learning the same lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been in, 5 movies or something. No, 6 movies.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Is there any other thing that we can move on to? Can we talk briefly about General Hux?
I heard someone saying that he's a lot like a Monty Python type character, and I feel like if you look at him that way, he's a lot more bearable. Just sort of...
I know, yeah.
He's intentionally over the top.
I like how he was about to actually shoot Kylo Ren.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think...
I like that small bit, but I do feel like Kylo Ren should have just choked him whenever he just defied him.
Yeah, and... I mean, it's one of those cases of you have a really great actor, but the character he's being asked to play doesn't have that much screen time, and there isn't that much complexity to it. So you end up with a character kind of like Finn, where what's the purpose?
The only thing that we really know about Hux is about his father and grandfather. You can just read the books about how they were the ones who created the First Order from the ashes of the Empire.
Okay.
It's a great read. Aftermath is the book series that explains kind of how all of this goes down.
Yeah.
Check it out. Not sponsored.
So, shall we move on to the characters we've been saving?
Leia!
So yeah, I feel like her moment with the Force, for me, that moment didn't break anything for me. I was just so happy that they didn't kill her off in that moment, but I definitely see how that to some people wasn't as impactful as it should have been.
It just looks, the way they shot it, I think, is one of the basic problems. They shot it and made her look like she's Superman or Mary Poppins.
Yeah.
The way she's just flying through the air, just going in straight, kind of like that. The reason why that whole scene bugs me is not that she survived the blast. It's not that she survived space, because, it makes sense if she's force sensitive. The Force sometimes can shield you from that stuff. My problem is that how easily she just lifted her hand and got back to the ship
Yeah.
with the Force. I understand the whole power of the Force, but the Force has limits, and I point to like very specific examples. First example is Plo Koon in the Clone Wars. Can't really use that one because he's an alien, and so his biology doesn't really work. But there's an episode in Rebels where their main Jedi character gets blown out into the space, and for him, it's a real struggle because he's losing oxygen. He has to get back to the ship quickly. He's also freezing to death really quickly, and so he's using the Force, very struggling. He's almost dying, and he gets back in the nick of time. Here, there doesn't really seem to be much in terms of consequences. She's just like, flies to the ship.
Mm-hmm.
No struggle whatsoever. That's my problem. It's not that she survived all that. It's just that there's no continuity for that small bit.
Yeah. And when you look at the moment in context of the plot, it doesn't actually serve any purpose. It could have just been that, Leia wasn't on the bridge for that moment when it got shot, and it wouldn't have changed anything except that now Leia would have been conscious for the plot, so they would have to find...
I think it's basically just done for Kylo Ren to...
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But Kylo Ren's action doesn't really matter in that moment either because, she still gets blown out of the bridge anyways. So it's one of those moments where the character's actions didn't actually impact the story.
Also, Leia's character in this, it was kind of odd watching her because we all know that the actress passed away. So
yeah, and I feel like they should have taken out the fake out just for that.
Because it just seemed like wrong. It's like her character's dead. She's a corpse in space. Like what? They're actually doing that?
Yeah.
It kind of seems demeaning for her character.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm not sure how they could have put her into a conscious or something any other way, but I feel like there could have been something better. But I would say the rest of her character, besides that, is actually really strong in this movie.
Yeah, she is. There's one other issue with continuity. So the ships track the other ship through hyperspace.
Right.
The issue with that is the actual response of the characters. They track this through hyperspace. That's impossible. There's so many examples where in Star Wars where another ship tracked another ship through hyperspace because they were tracking the ship with a beacon or something. There was an actual tracker on the ship. I'm surprised that their first instinct is like, oh no, they must put a tracker on us. Their first response, they track us through hyperspace. Oh, that's impossible. Well, they just did it. Well, that doesn't seem right. I feel like somewhere there was misinformation where what's impossible is not that they tracked him through hyperspace. What was impossible was they tracked it without actually having a physical beacon on them.
Yeah.
Which I feel like they did not get that point across at all,
Right.
which they never mentioned that. And so that just breaks a lot of continuity throughout the entire Star Wars universe.
Yeah. Yeah. They should have driven that thing home. And, it was cool to see them bringing something back up from Rogue One.
I sound like a nerd.
But, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. The Rogue One tie-in was actually a nice touch.
Yeah. So, anything else about Leia? I feel like there's not too much to say about her character beyond that, just because that's taken up so much of the conversation.
Yeah, there's nothing much left to say about her character except how they're gonna rebuild the whole rebellion in the next movie, which the next movie needs to have Lando back
Yeah, I hope that
because they at this point they don't have any more original characters, and the
Chewie.
original plan. I mean, yeah, Chewie, but
He doesn't speak English.
the original plan was that each movie there was supposed to be a lead for a specific character. The Force Awakens, Han Solo was the lead. This movie is Luke, and the next movie was where Leia was supposed to be her big character and like lead on to put down the mantle. But with Carrie Fisher gone, that whole plan and symmetry is broken, and so you can't really do that. And now with Luke's character being gone, it's like, okay, we don't really have our characters, so they need to bring back Lando, and it makes sense that they would bring him back, especially since they sent the whole message like, oh, join us, we're in help. And they said that a bunch of people heard the message. So if Lando heard the message, he should come back, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like
I
feel like Luke is going to come back in the next movie as a Force ghost.
Yeah. I think
Just
if nothing else, something audible.
Yeah.
One thing that happened in Force Awakens that I found out through several different people's analyses was the two most prominent voices in Rey's like whole vision thing are the original Obi-Wan from the original trilogy and Ewan McGregor at the end saying, "These are your first steps," as it fades out. Something like even just like a whisper in her talk or in her like meditations or whatever, or something like that would even be nice. But I think, yeah, seeing a Force ghost would be good again. It also could be cool if Luke shows up to Kylo as a Force ghost and just kind of annoys him.
yeah.
Because he kind of did say he would, or something of similar caliber.
I think now is the perfect time to transition to the Luke Skywalker.
Luke.
So let's get this thing out of the way. Was his character in character?
I feel like it kind of reminded me of Tron Legacy, where
Yeah.
you have a character who learned to be active, and then in between the movies has become passive and now has to relearn to be active. I mean, it didn't bother me, but I'm also not like Star Wars purist, so
I would say I could take it either way. Like, I think that no, it makes sense why he would be like this. You know, he failed a Padawan, his own nephew. His entire Jedi temple was destroyed and younglings killed. Like, it makes sense, you know. And that's the basic thing that the Jedis did. Yoda and Obi-Wan, they both went into hiding. It makes sense why he would go into hiding. But the reason why it would be out of character is because Luke Skywalker is supposed to be the most optimistic of the group. And Mark Hamill did say that Luke Skywalker, he probably would sulk around for a year or two, but he would eventually, get himself back up because, again, Luke is the most optimistic character. Right. So, either way, it fits in a way, but it also doesn't fit. And I just wish, Mara Jade, I just want that.
So, my opinion of it, just like what Matt said, was I don't know. My opinion is that Tron Legacy did it better. I'm not opposed to this whole thing. Like, in the original trilogy, of course, we see two Jedi that have run and hid, but they were a little bit more justified. like Luke might have been killed, but there was no Order 66 placed against him. It was like, yeah, this guy is valuable, but like, like it didn't seem as important to them. I don't know, but I don't know. Yeah, I'm with you in the fact that he just seemed too unsure, and it seems like, okay, one of his um apprentices failed him and killed the others, so he should be like, oh, I'm so terrible, but then like man up and go deal with it in like a week, maybe.
I do feel
maybe less.
I do feel what is in character is that Luke sort of overestimated what he was able to do in starting this new Jedi Temple.
Yeah.
I feel, Luke has sort of always been like, oh, you're the powerful Jedi and you're going to save the galaxy. So I feel like that whole part was in character. And then I feel like we're missing an entire story, though, of how Luke realizes, oh, I can't do this, so...
See, yeah, here's my, here's one reason why I feel like, his character wasn't received as well, is that we never really got to see his journey into where he was now. It's just a complete opposite from what he was from Return of the Jedi. Return of the Jedi, like, he's very optimistic. He's a Jedi now. He's gonna start his own academy. To where we are now is like, oh, Jedi must die. Shun.
Mm-hmm.
And we never got to see that progression.
Yeah.
Like, we never got to see, it was like, I failed him, and then we never really got to see all of that journey. So that's why.
Yeah, I agree. And like, frankly, the current trilogy is not bad, but it's like they're excluding the more like exciting parts of the story, and that can be a really good storytelling device, but until the third movie, it's just kind of it feels more like a missed opportunity than anything.
Yeah, I guess I'm more bummed out that Mark Hamill just fundamentally disagreed with where they took his character.
Yeah.
And I do think this is actually on Disney. I think that they should have, as soon as Mark Hamill was saying bad things about the character, I felt like they should have sat him down and said, hey, you can't do that because you're messing with the did. Well, yeah, and he's recently said that he's changed his mind, but for a while there, I feel like Disney wasn't quite on the ball. And I think that's most of the fans' problems with what they did with Luke is that Mark Hamill has problems with it.
Well,
also, another thing is that there's a clip of him, after the very premiere of the movie, where Mark Hamill just looks devastated after watching the movie. And it's like, oh, what is he devastated about? And then the theory is probably like, oh, I guess they didn't tell Mark Hamill that Luke Skywalker died at the end. So.
I don't think that they would have kept that from him.
I mean, it's nothing new because they always do that to Star Wars.
And it may have been seen it in action. He didn't think, or it may have been something like, one of the things in the credits is, it's in memory of Carrie Fisher, so, that kind of bums people out as well. So, I feel like it's jumping a little bit too far to conclusions to say that he didn't know, but it isn't out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah. I'm just wondering what's going through his head through that sad clip.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't know. It's actors know their characters probably better than anyone else, and obviously the people that wrote the characters have a specific direction, but the actors are the experts in emotions for the characters. And I think they made a very cool new character for Luke, and this is kind of what I saw for Leia too. But when I watch it, I don't think, oh, that's Luke Skywalker, or oh, that's Leia. Like I think, oh, these are older generation people that have kind of lost their way and they're trying to do their best, but like, it doesn't ruin the story for me, because these new characters are still good characters, but they're just not the same. And I don't know. I think they could have done better, especially with Luke. Leia didn't have a huge character arc in the first series anyways. And most of that character arc was with Han. So, like, him being out of the picture kind of... But, I don't know. Like, Han was the only one that I thought in the last movie to be Han. I don't know.
So I do feel like the original characters, that they're at their best when they're interacting with another original character. Like when Han and Leia were interacting, like that's a great scene. And then when Luke and Leia were interacting here, and that's another beautiful scene. And you gotta love that there's this whole history and chemistry there. And like you don't really get any of that with these new characters, because you haven't gone through that whole history with them as we did here.
Yeah, I mean, one of the concerns with this new trilogy is in 30 years when, Star Wars episode whatever, and Finn and Rose hop onto, I don't know, some random ship, and, Rose, we're home. Is everyone going to be as excited as they were for this new trilogy to see the old characters come back?
I kind of feel like Disney doesn't really know where they're even gonna take the story at this point. That the story is just being written as they go on. They just don't know what the overall end goal is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's awkward because, like, obviously they want to appeal to the older generation Star Wars fans, and they want to make a story that appeals to new Star Wars fans. But I don't see why you have to sacrifice much either way. Like, I think obviously you'll lose some people either way, but if your goal is to make a good story or a good movie, then you shouldn't be worrying about those things. And like that's kind of a problem with any sort of sequelization. That was kind of the problem with Legend of Korra for me, is they wanted to appeal too much to an older story and not just create their own new one. But I don't know. I feel like we did talk a lot of crap about this movie, even though, like, I will still say, like, I love it. If I was given the option, I would watch it again easily.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think...
I mean, yeah, we love the movie.
Yeah.
There's just some issues with it.
I think, like, just to, like, list positives, and you guys can add on whenever, but, like, the awesome fight with Snoke's guards was, like, amazing. The light speed ship through the other ship looked so dope. Different force abilities. The whole, like, hey, I'm gonna show up as a force projection and just, like, tease you a bit. I think that was cool.
Let's talk about that.
A little bit more depth into the construction of a lightsaber, as we saw a lightsaber get broken in half. Just some beautiful shots with, like, the whole salt planet battle. Crystal wolves, I just
Dave
love the crystal balls.
Filoni.
What else? I don't know. Oh, the hug between Ray and Finn at the end was like heart melting. I don't even ship them as
Oh,
like dating. I ship them as like friends. I thought that was just adorable.
oh, there's another mistake. So Rey apparently meets Poe here for the first time.
Hmm.
And if you read through the Force Awakens novelization, which is also a canon book,
Hmm.
they actually met in that book. So I don't know what happened here.
Yeah. And
Mm.
I feel like it's easy to get caught up in the negatives of this movie, but I think overall, I mean, this is one of my favorite Star Wars. It might even be my favorite just because it's one of those movies. It's a glass half empty, glass half full type thing of there's bad and there's good, and what you decide what you're going to focus on. And it's worth noting, the Rotten Tomatoes audience score is abysmally low for this, but if you look at Cinema Score, which is a bit more well sort of policed, it actually has an A rating, which is its highest rating, or I guess maybe not the highest, but one of the higher ratings. So it isn't like every audience member hated it. It's, I
Yeah.
think it's overall been received very positively.
Mm. Oh, I just closed out Skype. Give me a sec.
Huh.
It's okay. Call's still going.
Did you see the thing
Yeah,
I
I
sent
see
you?
that. I mean, it could have just been like they might be in the same.
It's a small detail, but it's like
I mean, but
I wish.
even still, like I've been in the same room with people before and hadn't even realized it until like 3 years later, where it's like, oh, okay, we actually like saw each other at this point, or we were in the same school at this point, but we didn't know until now. Kind of that sort of thing. I kind of understand that. My just on a side note to that, my aunt already ships Ray and Poe just so they can have sons and daughters named Tilo and Fa. So they can have Poe,
Ha.
Ray, me. Yeah. It's bad. It's so bad.
So, shall we talk about the Luke force projection?
Yeah,
I
let's.
really liked that. Just in terms of like,
Yeah.
someone pointed out to me, it's almost like the Force is working like technology, where people are advancing it and using it in ways that you didn't think possible before.
Mhm. Yeah, and
Well, it actually seems that force projection was already possible before it, but it's a very thing that you don't want to do because it will kill you.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
to that extent, I think if Luke hadn't gone for as long as he did, or maybe do as much as he did, it might not have been as bad. But like, I do agree. Like the whole concept of like your connection to the Force is a skill, and is a like it's a relationship almost. It's a push and pull. And as your relationship grows stronger, you learn new things, and people have different relationships with the Force. Hence why certain Sith can use Force lightning, and certain Sith prefer to choke people out. Good on them either way. Not good on them, but like, you know, it's the your connection to the Force is like more of a personal thing, and I think that's cool. Not to say that like just because one person can lift rocks doesn't mean that another person can't, but it's like there are certain skills that most anybody can do, and then there are certain skills that are more unique and more learned than others. That's just cool.
I kind of feel like the movie just didn't do the best job at hiding the fact that he was a ghost.
I liked that. I liked that a
I
lot.
yeah.
because looking back on it, you can be like, oh, I can see how he wasn't. So I could have predicted this, but at least personally, I knew something was up, but I didn't know what at the time.
But I was obviously distracted by seeing that he had his original lightsaber. Even before
Yeah.
he ignited, I saw the hilt on his
Yeah,
belt, and I was like,
that just got
what?
destroyed.
And so my mind is thinking about that while Luke is having this beautiful scene with Leia, and I'm so distracted about
Well,
this.
and for me, it was like, he looks different, but I can't tell what. And then on my second watch through, I'm like, oh, his hair's shorter in this, and less gray, and oh,
I feel like they should have just made it that he had his green lightsaber instead. You know, because that would make sense.
yes, but I don't really know. I agree with that.
I know the reason why they
Right.
didn't. They did it because for one reason, because him having the blue lightsaber would anger Kylo Ren the most, because he's been obviously trying to get that lightsaber. So
True.
and also character reason, Luke's with the blue lightsaber. That's the lightsaber of a hero, kind of, to him, because his green lightsaber is the lightsaber he used to almost kill Kylo Ren. So.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And like, I think also the whole part of him like not dying to like 1,000 laser shots was kind of like to build up his legend. And I feel like most people knew Luke Skywalker for having this awesome lightsaber and these awesome force powers and just being
Yeah,
awesome.
I mean that.
And that kind
That's
of built
actually
it up.
well established before the movie, because they released the book called Legends of Luke Skywalker, and it's full of a bunch of tales that obviously are just fantasized stories that have nothing to do with the actual story. They're just made up by people who've heard from another person who heard from another person. It's fun. It's cute.
So
the dice.
Oh, yeah.
that was a nice touch.
It was odd because I was wondering, like, wait, what are those things for? But those dice did actually appear in A New Hope
Mm-hmm.
for one scene only, but it was only put there as a joke. But I think the reason why they focused it more here is because that dice plays a big deal for the Solo movie. Because I believe that those are the actual dice he uses to win the Falcon.
I do
okay.
know when they were writing that scene and when they were and this was from an interview with people who were behind continuity, those dice were supposed to play a bigger role in The Force Awakens. So that's why they made such a big deal out of it here.
Yeah.
And of course they cut it out from The Force Awakens, so
Yeah.
So we never got to hear Luke's third lesson.
Oh, really?
I wonder what it would have been.
No, we only got through two of them. I think the third one was cut for time because Rian Johnson said that he had all the stuff we combined, he had like a 3-hour film that they had to take out a bunch of awesome shots that he said.
Extended edition.
Nah, just deleted scenes.
Well, yeah. And I think they should have cut out the Canto Bite scene, but yeah.
So Luke just brushing his shoulder off. Like, one, that's kind of funny, kind of epic, but two, it doesn't seem like a Star Wars kind of joke. It's like, again, for me, it breaks the fourth wall. It's like,
I would say it is similar caliber to any of Obi-Wan's one-liners in the prequel trilogy.
but it's obviously made for a meme.
Well, yeah.
Definitely. It's like, they're definitely trying to push a meme here, which it actually is a meme now.
Oh, yeah,
so.
yeah. That doesn't surprise me in the slightest.
I saw that. I was like, oh, come on, please don't do those jokes. But yeah, I kind of wish that we had an actual lightsaber battle in this movie.
Yeah.
Because what we got here was a dodge battle.
Well, okay, we
which,
got that, but we got an epic 2v like 8. Maybe it's 6.
And I love that, and that was so awesome. But it's like we had no lightsabers really clashing in this, except for the flashback. But that was cut short.
True.
Yeah.
I don't know. I obviously I'm always down for a lightsaber battle, but like I'm kind of okay with them not doing that in this movie. I don't feel like they needed to.
And I also feel like Luke dying at the end of this movie wasn't really earned.
Yeah, they didn't do enough with it.
Because I kind of felt like his whole arc here was like for him to get back to who he was of Luke Skywalker. And so him, at the end of there, is like, this is just the beginning. But then they just ended off with him just becoming a Force Ghost with, like, I don't feel like we got to that point yet with his character.
Mm.
So, are we ready to do final thoughts?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah, maybe. If there's anything else in my mind, I don't. There's so much to talk about in this movie that we can't just say it all here because it just take too much time.
Well, yeah, especially since it's been like 2.5 hours already.
Yeah, so I'm glad we didn't get a fourth member.
I think we should go into our closing statements, final thoughts.
More so favorite moments you like to say.
Yeah.
My favorite moment was obviously the hyperspace moment. I didn't really talk about this, but Holdo is actually my favorite character in this movie, mostly because of her hair and dress. I thought the makeup and costume department knocked it out of the park with just some very simple things. But yeah, I felt like that was really the moment that made the character. And yeah. And it's also just an epic moment. And then also the lightsaber battle, which were both moments brought up before, but
my favorite moments, I like the whole scene of Kylo and Rey meeting and walking to Snoke and killing Snoke, and then that whole scene is just probably my favorite scene. And then I like Luke force projecting himself in the end. That was a fun little like, ha, gotcha moment. And kind of also reinforces that like you don't need to be aggressive. You don't need to be you don't need to attack in order to save the day. Like you can be passive and still win. I don't know. I liked those parts a lot. And the hug with Finn and Rey at the end. I still think I don't know, so feelsy.
It's cute.
It is cute.
For me, my favorite part of the movie was actually the music. I feel like the soundtrack for this movie was definitely much better than last one, and I think it mainly has to do with how some of the scenes were shot. There was actually moments to breathe. They were very quiet shots. Luke sitting next to Yoda. And another reason why I like the music is they brought back a lot of the original trilogy music, especially Yoda. When he showed up, they started playing his theme, and that was fun. When Luke comes to talk with Leia, they started playing their theme. That was kind of like heart-wrenching, kind of. And then the one thing that I just really started pumping out to was when the Millennium Falcon takes the TIE Fighter away, and John Williams did the best decision he could ever do, and he brought back TIE Fighter attack, that epic song, and I've been listening to that song over and over again. And I do feel like that song was actually the perfect fit for that whole movie. But there's still some points of the soundtrack that I feel like were kind of weak. Mainly that they didn't have Rey's theme from last movie.
They did
in this
but
one.
Not very frequently.
Well, not really. They had it at the beginning with Luke and Leia, but they didn't use it again at all. The most strong of the theme that they brought back was Kylo Ren, but my problem with that theme is that it takes so long to actually get through that theme. Instead of it being like quick note, it's actually
yeah.
But the reason why it became epic here is because they actually had a choir to back it up with. So
yeah,
that was cool.
Yeah, I would have liked to hear more of Rey's theme. Rey has a really awesome theme, in my opinion. But
I feel like that was the best part of last soundtrack.
I think so too.
So, how does this movie rate in your Star Wars ranking?
Oof. Okay. This is the thing. As like a movie, like it's hard for me. As a movie, I prefer it to The Force Awakens, but I just had such a better experience with Force Awakens that it's hard for me to rate it over that. Just out of 10, I would say like it's an 8 out of 10 or so, which works because it's the 8th movie. But I don't know, it's definitely better than the prequels, better than 7. Probably on par with the original trilogy, maybe a tad bit worse. But that's a lot of that too is like because it's a sequelization and because it is less fresh than the originals. But you know, amazing special effects and stuff definitely help. So I don't know. Yeah, it's just like, yeah.
Matthew?
For me, I don't know. I keep changing mine. It probably falls between The Empire Strikes Back and Rogue One. Empire Strikes Back being my favorite, or at least the Star Wars that I feel is the best film. And that's just because, you know, this one has a few shaky plot moments, but it isn't quite as shaky as the first 2 acts of Rogue One.
Yeah.
But I do feel, and that might change. I haven't completely decided because Rogue One had a lot of like big moments at the end, whereas The Force Awakens, until the last act, I just didn't feel the excitement, and that changed the second time I watched it, but it didn't feel like Star Wars the first time, unlike Rogue One.
The Force Awakens or Last Jedi?
Oh, Last Jedi.
Okay.
For me, I have to stress again that I love Star Wars equally, and that when I put it inside ranks, it doesn't mean like one's better than the other. I just prefer watching one more than the other. And so for me, this movie and also Force Awakens, anything to do with the new trilogy, it's currently on the bottom of my ranking list because I'm not as invested in this story, and my ranking is more so the ones that I would want to rewatch over and over again. So for me, I'm not as crazy into rewatching these movies over and over again as I am with the prequels or the original trilogy or even Rogue One. So that's why they're currently at the bottom of the list. I'm not as invested with the characters, the whole universe. And, you know, maybe that could change with the third movie, but I'm not entirely sure.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So, final thoughts of the movies.
Go see it.
Yeah. Go see it more than once.
Yes. It improves the second time. If you didn't like it the first time, it's much better the second time. And also, go with someone who's excited to see it.
Yeah, well, assuming that somebody's gotten this far through the podcast, I'm assuming they've already seen it. Tell your friends that are less willing to see it to watch it with you, like Matt was saying, and have them, like, I would stress that the second time through, because you know all the twists are going to happen, the twists are less distracting.
I would also say check out Star Wars Explained and their channel. They do a really good job at pretty much explaining the books and stuff that help you get context for a lot of the stuff that happened in this movie. And I would say if you don't have the time to read the books or comic books, just check them out.
Another good resource is another YouTube channel, Stupendous Wave. Does a really good job of kind of explaining some of the details within the movie. If you want a further explanation based on lore there too.
And watch The Force Awakens before you see The Last Jedi, especially if you haven't seen it since Rogue One.
Yeah.
And I think the thing that we should end this podcast with is, what is your hope for the Han Solo movie?
That it not be as bad as it looks like it will be.
Yeah, I don't know. I personally, Star Wars to me is a story about Jedi, so movies that don't focus on the Jedi Sith are less desirable to me, but as long as I'm still gonna watch it, so like it doesn't matter. I just hope
it doesn't matter.
It's good. That's all I'm saying.
And I hope that the rumors that the actor can't act is false.
Yeah, or that he is able to correct that and change those rumors.
And Lucasfilm, we're going to see this anyway, so make it worth our time.
And also, probably think about changing where you're gonna go with Star Wars, because right now it's kind of controversial.
Yeah, it's kind of all over the place, which is
Yeah.
So is that everything?
I think so.
Yep.
All right. I believe that's all we have for today. So yeah, thank you guys for watching, and we will see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.